Hello, welcome back to my channel, and I'm here with another homeschool or home education video. So literally about 2 years ago, I think it was, crazy. Oh, my phone. I did a video, just kind of like a brief overview of my homeschool journey. Since I've gotten a little bit more traction and views on that initial video, I am going to make more videos in the future, just that revolves a little bit around like daily life, field trips, social interactions, all of those things, because I feel like those are the questions that people typically have, especially when they are homeschooling young children. And so today I'm going to talk about college admissions as a home educated student, just because it's kind of fresh in my mind. It's one of my areas of expertise, and I think I can film it a little quicker than some of the other videos that I have. So if you're interested in learning more about that, as well as just hearing more about my homeschool journey, make sure that you hit the subscribe button, leave a thumbs up, and stay tuned. Okay, so I'm going to date myself here a little bit. And just as a quick recap, in case this happens to be your first time on my channel or hearing this, I was a home educated student from K through 12, all 13 years of education, of primary and secondary school. Yes, kindergarten through 12th grade. And I was homeschooled by my parents, my mom and my dad. One of the reasons why it's really important for me to make these videos is because I don't think there's a really big representation of adults who have been homeschooled on the internet. Like, a lot of times if you go up on blogs or on YouTube, obviously within the niche of Black homeschoolers, but even on a larger scale as homeschoolers in general, I think you see a lot of homeschool parents like vlogging and talking about their experiences and sharing tips. You see like documentaries about families who are actively homeschooling now, but you don't always see a lot of people on the other side of it, right? Like, where are the adults out there who were homeschooled? Like, how did they turn out? Like, what happens? Like, we know that like homeschooled kids get into college, they have slightly better rates of getting into and graduating from college, and we know like in theory that they're successful as adults, but like, what does that actually look like? So I think that not only can my experience be helpful from, the technical sense of like, oh, tips for homeschooling my kids, I also thought that it might just be helpful to get like, that kind of 2020 review type of perspective on the homeschooling process from someone who's actually been a homeschooled student. Because even myself, I find that it's kind of hard to locate that perspective and that experience on the internet. So hopefully that this helps to kind of fill a little bit of that void and prompt some other past homeschool students to share their experiences. So first of all, a lot of individuals who are homeschooled are often homeschooled in very different ways. I think maybe now you might see more kids who are like homeschooled the majority of their educational life, but a lot of times there's like a time when a family starts or stops homeschooling, right? Like, maybe they start somewhere in like middle school or elementary school and decide, you know what, this isn't working, we're going to homeschool, and then they homeschool throughout. Or maybe they've been homeschooling from the very beginning and then they stop at like middle school or high school. So this is all in the perspective that like you might be a homeschool family who does this for a period of time. It could be a year or two, it could be 6, it could be 8, it could be 4. Obviously everything that I say is speaking from the fact that this was my only educational experience, but please take any of that as you will. When we speak of college admissions through the homeschool lens, we are talking about students who have actively been homeschooled in high school. So that's either all 4 years, or I would say at least 2 years. If you're someone who like maybe only homeschooled 1 year in high school, some of these things are going to apply to you, but not as much, because it's just 1 year, and by the time you watch the video, you'll get it. It's just a little bit different. But this is assuming that you've spent all of the majority of high school as a home educated student. So I'm going to break down the different components of a college application and how it might differ for you in the context of being a homeschool student. Outside of the fact that I successfully applied to and graduated from college myself, I also worked for the past 5 years as a full-time college advisor for African American students. I have seen and helped send students to every single college you can think of: public school, private school, state college, community college, Ivies, like you name it. I have seen it. I've been down deep into the trenches. So just to let you know that there is credibility and experience, professional experience behind what I'm saying. Let's go. So to answer your question in like 2 seconds, applying to college as a homeschooler is not much different than applying as any other student. You're going to have to complete the same applications, such as the Common App or maybe the Coalition app, whatever you choose to do. You're still going to have to submit your application, your test scores if you choose to, and if you've taken them, you're going to have to submit an essay if it's required. You're going to have to include transcripts, and then any other supplemental materials if it's available or you choose to. Everything about the process is the same. Your deadlines are the same. Colleges are well acquainted with students coming from homeschool backgrounds. So the idea that maybe they're not going to know what to do when they see your application, or they're going to be like confused or something, like, no. They see homeschool students all the time. They admit homeschooled students all the time, and they know how to evaluate them. Just like they know how to evaluate all of the other types of educational environments that students come from when they apply to college. Okay, so when it comes to the application itself, you're just going to fill out your personal information. That's your name, where you live, your school, and your school address, which is obviously going to be your house. Information like, do your parents go to college? What languages do you speak? Like, what activities are you involved in? All of those things. That is not going to change as a homeschooled student. Next is your essay. Your essay is not going to change as a homeschool student. They're going to ask you for 650 words on a given topic or a topic of your choice. You are going to write those 650 words on the given topic or the topic of your choice. Obviously, as a homeschooled student, you're going to have unique experiences, just like every other student has unique experiences for any given reason. But that is going to be the same. If you're applying to a selective university, they are going to ask you for supplemental essays or short essays or answers. Sometimes it's a list of books that you've read, or it might be something about, what is your definition of community, those kinds of things. You're going to answer those questions in the allotted word count, just like you would anything else. You're going to have an activities list. It's going to be 10 spots. This is all based on the Common App for the most part, and other apps are very similar. You have like your Black College Common App, you have the Coalition app. Sometimes universities, state university systems have their own, like the UNC system has their own, the SUNYs, the CUNYs, the University of California system, Cal State system, and on. They have their own web portals and application systems. They are all a little bit different, but they're pretty much the same idea. So you're going to have a given list of activities. It's usually going to be the name of the activity, if you've held a certain position in the activity. They're going to ask what years of high school you participated in, and then there's usually a time for like a short description, like 1 sentence. And so that in particular is something that is a little bit different sometimes for homeschool students. As many homeschoolers know, activities can be a little daunting and sometimes even challenging for homeschool students. There's so many ways that you can become involved in your community, but it's not always as seamless as it is in a high school that has activities and you just go sign up, or sports where you just go and try out. A lot of times you have to be very intentional and proactive about your activities as a homeschool student. So sometimes homeschool students may feel that they don't have as many activities as they would have if they were like in a public high school, for example. And sometimes homeschool students don't have that testimony. They've got like a super long resume, and like 10 activities isn't enough for everything that they've done. So that's really on a case-by-case basis. And so I will come back to that in a moment, but the action of, literally filling it out, that's the same. Then you have your test scores. A lot of schools are test optional at this point, but if you're applying somewhere that requires test scores, or if you've taken a standardized test and you want to submit your score, that's going to be the same. You sign up for the SAT or the ACT on a given day, you register for it, you go to the local high school, you take the test, you get your scores back, and you submit them like every other student. Things are a little bit different. Sometimes when you're actually taking the SAT or ACT, they'll ask you for things like your school code, and obviously you don't have a school code, but there is a generalized one for home educated students. So things like that are a little bit different, but when you go on the website to sign up for your standardized test, all of that information is there. They'll walk you through it and it'll be fine. And then last but not least is your transcript. The same thing, your school administrator sends your transcript. And the transcript has a lot of information. In a more traditional setting, if I was an admissions officer looking at a student's transcript, I'm going to see what classes they took and obviously their grades, but I'm also going to get a school profile. It's going to tell me a little bit about where the school is. I'll get to know, are they in an urban or a rural county? Is this a public school or private school? I get to see how many students are in their class, what types of coursework is available. That allows me to understand if the student has taken some of the most challenging courses that are available to them. If that school has AP classes offered, did the student take any or did they not? Those kinds of statistics and data give context around a student's educational experiences and attainment. And so you're going to send them the exact same thing, except if you're homeschooled, that means that your parent is your administrator and they are the ones sending this. So if you are going through like a curriculum, which some homeschool families do, it might already be set up that you're automatically just going to order your transcript and it's going to come. For a lot of students, they're going to have maybe a little bit more customized curriculums. That was the situation that I was in. And so there are tons of templates and things. I won't get into all of them right now, but there are lots of templates and resources in which a parent can create their own transcript. And you're going to input all of the data from those years of high school that you've completed. And it's going to be the exact same information. It's just obviously going to have your homeschool information on it. So if your homeschool has a name, you would put that at the top with your address, the student's information, and all of those things. That's really it for the most part. So that part is different because usually someone else is dealing with the transcripts, and so your family has the responsibility for it, but you're going to send it the same way. And then finally, our letters of recommendation. That is going to be the same. You're going to ask someone to write your letter. You're going to put their email in. They're going to write it for you. They're going to send it. And that's the end of it. This is another situation that, again, on a case-by-case basis, depending on how vibrant your community is, you may or may not feel like you have a harder time finding letter writers than, a student who might have 5 or 6 different teachers in a school, plus their principal, plus, their manager at their part-time job or something like that, or their coach on the swimming team, things like that. Sometimes, just having individuals who are not related to you comes naturally to a student who's in that type of academic environment, versus when you're homeschooled, everyone who's like a part of your educational system is related to you. And that is one thing that a lot of times colleges will stipulate, is just asking that you're getting letters and things from people who are not related to you. Now there are times and instances, for example, part of the admissions process is usually that you get one of your letters has to be from at least one person who's instructed you educationally. I do remember that I know my dad wrote a letter. I don't know if my mom wrote one, but I know at least one of my parents did write a letter for me, because obviously they were my teachers. And there were some colleges that accepted that, but they did require me to send an additional letter. Okay, so that is basically all of the aspects of an application. That's for college as well as scholarships too, but everything really is the same. With that in mind, there's something that I always tell families. Let me get some water. So that being said, there's something I always tell families and I always tell students, and that is a lot of times we think that college admissions begins in your senior year, right? Some students will say, no, I am proactive. It begins summer before senior year. And that's true. Admissions itself begins at either of those periods. That's when you're actually thinking about what colleges you want to go to and filling things out. But I always tell students that if you really, really want to know the truth, college admissions is your first 3 years of high school. It is 9th, 10th, and 11th grade. That is your college application. By the time a student comes to me in senior year, I cannot change the classes that you took or the grades you received. I can't change the school that you went to. I can't change how you spent your time outside of the classroom and what activities you were involved in. I can't change the people that you met along the way who might write you letters. I can't change or impact any of those things. The only thing I have an influence on is which schools you apply to, how you write your essay, and I could just encourage you along the way. That's literally it. Every student, regardless of what background they're coming from, has to think about these things if they want to apply to college. But you do have to think about it just a little bit more intentionally when you are homeschooled, because let's be honest, whether you have 10 kids or you have one, homeschooling itself is a much more isolated experience than being in a traditional public-private charter type of school, just because you cannot replicate what it's like to be around 100 kids or 500 or 700 kids, however big your school environment might be, right? So it's automatically going to be harder to join a bunch of clubs or rack up leadership positions and awards. It's going to be harder to get awards that weren't given to you by your mom and dad. It's going to be harder to meet people who you're not related to, right? These are all the things that might come up later when you have to write an essay, fill out an application, if you're in an admissions interview. And again, admissions officers know these things, but to put your best foot forward, especially if you end up, again, applying to a place that's more selective, I would challenge all of you all to just think about what are ways that you can really broaden your network. Make sure that your children are interacting with people who are outside of the family, because they're going to need those people who can testify for them, basically. Testify to their work ethic, their intellect, their engagement, get your student involved in the community. I remember personally being so just like worried and anxious because I didn't think I had a lot of community service. And I found this out maybe around 11th grade. I started hearing that service was really important to colleges, and I was like, I've done no service. So I joined the Red Cross. I started volunteering at like all the local elections. And then I started just doing things in my community. I had a vegetable garden for a while, and so I grew it felt like hundreds of cucumbers, and I passed them out to my neighbors. That was something I wrote about in my college application. And so those are some of the things I did because I was really insecure about my community service, and I was a very service-minded individual, but I didn't really have tangible ways in which I could show that on my resume up until that point. Even if you don't see posted opportunities, knock on doors, send emails, DM, all of the things, explain your situation and your passion. It's very rare that someone's going to turn down extra hands or help or, some type of volunteering or whatever the case might be. But really think about and brainstorm what are things that you can do in your area. If you're in a maybe very rural community, maybe you're not near a city and you don't have those resources, maybe you don't have a public library or something nearby, try to think of maybe some summer things that you can do. There's lots of university-based summer camps and programs, things that might be in or out of your state. Don't worry about funds because a lot of these places do have scholarships, especially if you're a student from a BIPOC background or if you're from a rural area or a low income area. There's usually some type of financial assistance. So if you're not able to do things during the school year, see if there's ways that you can use the summer for your student to go somewhere, even if it's for a weekend or a week. And all of those things look really, really good on the resume. But that would be my biggest, word of advice, is that those first 3 years are important. And so some of the things that are challenging to homeschool students when it comes to just being involved and meeting more people, just make sure you're a little more intentional about that throughout the high school years. And just as a word of encouragement, because I love to encourage and empower and put things in perspective, anything that you might be feeling a little nervous about, or again, insecure about, like I did, you know, I was like, I don't have community service. I can't tell you how many kids I work with, young adults, students, all the time. They might be in some of the biggest public or private schools you could ever imagine. And there are parts of their application in which they feel that they're lacking. And I will tell you, like, they might actually be lacking. Like, it's not just a thing where they're being self-conscious. Like, there's students who are in schools right now and they haven't done any community service, or they've never won an award, right, for anything. Or they don't really have challenging courses. They're like, I didn't take any AP classes. I'm not in the IB program, right? So even though these might be challenges that disproportionately impact or, you know, affect homeschool families, just keep in mind that there are plenty of students facing the same challenges, and they are in school, and they're also trying to figure out, how do I show service or leadership, or, you know, all of these kinds of things when I don't have this as part of my application. So if you are in that situation, maybe you're applying to college now and you're watching this and you're one of those students who's like, yep, I'm missing like 3 of these things or 1 of these things. I just want you to know that having that educational background is not singularly putting you in a disadvantage or the reason why you're missing those things, because there's students who are in the biggest cities in the world or some of the largest high schools in the world, and they also are missing those things. And there's always a way to present yourself so that you can have the best success possible come spring. So I don't want this to be super, super long. But yeah, I hope some of this information was helpful and again, kind of put things into perspective. There will be more homeschool videos coming, like I said, that are more like daily and down in the trenches. If you have questions or suggestions for videos, please drop them in the comments, because I will make them and I want to hear them and make sure I'm answering questions that you have. But until next time, I thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.